Welcome back to Screen Crush. I'm Ryan Airy, and this is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things that you might have missed in Moon Knight Episode 4. And I know we all want to talk about that ending, and I'm going to get there. We have a video coming out tomorrow that breaks down the idea that the whole series was in Mark's head, and we have another video coming out with other theories. Just be patient with us. We're having a lot of fun with this. Right, so this episode begins with the camera upside down with the silhouette of Osiris's avatar. Inverting a camera like this is a way to visually convey that the world order has changed or is about to change, like when Killmonger took the throne in Black Panther, or in this case that Ammit is about to rise to power because her last obstacle, Khonshu, is out of the way. Khonshu is trapped inside an Ushabti, which is an Egyptian funerary figure. Now these figures were placed in tombs so they could come to life and serve their masters in the afterlife. We even see a few in Alexander's tomb later on. But here they are being used to trap the gods, and we counted 10 of these in total, including maybe the protector god Sobek and Anubis, the god of the afterlife. Now we just posted a video about all the different gods in the Ennead where we speculated about this great rift that occurred between God and man. Stephen was reading about it in episode 1. Basically, there was some event thousands of years ago that led to Ammit being captured and imprisoned and the other gods withdrawing from earthly activities.
We have not abandoned humanity. They abandoned us.
Now we speculated on what this could have been. Could it have been Kang or Apocalypse? Who knows? But this wall of figurines isn't just some collection like some kind of proto-Funko Pop shelf. This looks like it's an indication of a civil war between the Egyptian gods that led to scores of the gods being imprisoned by the others. Harrow said,
"She grew weary of having to wait for sinners to commit their crime before punishing them."
So maybe Ammit and the other death gods like Anubis, backed by their cults, attempted a coup. They wanted to change the world order and the way the gods interacted with humanity. Now this coup failed and it fractured the gods into two sides, which is why Khonshu sounds sad when he speaks of Ammit being trapped in stone.
I remember that night.
Hey, if the gods are in jail, who's doing their jobs?
Well, what do you mean?
Like Khonshu's the god of the moon and he's a little toy now. But there's still a moon. So like, how's that work?
Now that's interesting. I think it's because the gods aren't the literal gods of things. They're the gods of what those things mean to us. It's more like these gods are aliens who existed out in the overvoid, and they connected with humanity and drew meaning from us. So Khonshu is the god of what the moon means to people. He's the protector of travelers because the moon travels across the sky, etc. That's how he draws his power from meaning. I mean, I guess that doesn't actually explain how he rebound the sky, but it turns out this all might have been in Mark's head, so who knows?
Who can say?
No one, buddy. No one. The episode picks up in the aftermath of Khonshu's imprisonment, and the first shot in the desert is of this beetle on a rock. Now this beetle is very deliberate. It was made with CGI. It's there for a reason. So I'm thinking that the beetle has a couple meanings. For one, it was common for ancient Egyptians to use tools in the shape of beetles. These were called scarabs, and they would use them for a variety of things, like placing your official seal on letters.
So why is there a scarab beetle right here?
Well, Doug, the god Khepri had the head of a beetle, and it was his sacred animal. He represented the rising sun and the renewal of life. Just as Stephen and Mark, post Khonshu, are in a new phase of their lives. One where they're free from the god's interference, but also they're vulnerable without his protection. Also, the episode could end with a sort of resurrection of Mark and Stephen, which was foreshadowed by this beetle. Actually, just give me 1 second here. Good.
Hey, what are you doing?
Oh, I'm taking pictures of this receipt.
What for? You're gonna make it your profile picture?
No, why would I do that?
Man, I don't know why humans do anything.
No, I'm doing it for this app called Fetch Rewards. They're the sponsor of this video. Fetch is this super easy to use app where I can earn free rewards on literally anything I buy. Like when I have a receipt, I take a picture and I earn points. Then I can redeem those points for hundreds of different rewards, including Amazon and Visa gift cards.
Oh, I guess you gotta shop at big chain stores?
Actually, not at all. I mean, this receipt is from a little store just down the road. You can also use e-receipts by connecting your Amazon account. Also, pro tip, certain stores and brands give you more points than others if you really want to use this system to your advantage. I like Fetch because it's so fast and easy. I was able to scan, redeem, and spend my points in just a few seconds. And it doesn't matter where the receipt is from, you just scan and go. You can earn points from anywhere, Amazon, restaurants, even my local comic book shop. Plus, there are tons of rewards options. I mean, yeah, there are the Amazon gift cards, but also there's things that I just want to try out, like a Dollar Shave Club kit. So we have a special deal for Screen Crush fans. If you download the app with the link in the description and use the code ScreenCrush, you get 3,000 points when you scan your first receipt. The way I look at it is, I might as well do it because I'm spending the money anyways. This way at least I get a little bit back. Now, back to Moon Knight. So then some bad guys show up, and I'm assuming they work for Harrow. Layla pulls the old Ian Malcolm Flair trick to distract them, and I like that she can really handle herself in a fight. The bullet holes in this windshield look almost exactly like the cracked glass holes in the ending credits, which are used as a visual metaphor to show Mark's fractured mind through those different broken reflections. But also notice the bullet hole is right on his forehead, alluding to his origin story that he'll repeat later on in this episode.
Shot me too. I was supposed to die that night.
In the comics, Mark worked for another mercenary who left him for dead in the desert. Then Khonshu resurrected him, and he became Moon Knight. You get it. We've talked about this in other episodes. All right, so they use the data, they find the tomb, and Stephen and Layla get along perfectly.
We're not going to do that.
We are not. It's just you and me.
Now, we've talked about this in the past, but we do have a theory about why this is the case. Mark was trying to push Layla away, so he left her and lived under a new name. But because of his mental disorder, this other identity took on a life of his own and became sentient, Stephen Grant. And because Mark was trying to bury everything he knew about Layla, this new ID was everything that Layla loved about him. So, Stephen shares her interest in poets, Egyptian history. He's honest, he's sweet, he's all the parts of Mark that she loved. So of course they hit it off. On the way to the tomb, they have to pass through this narrow canyon, which is a neat nod to
The Return of the King?
No, Doug, everything is not a reference to Return of the King. No, this is a neat nod to Egyptian architecture. So when they built the pyramids, they made these very narrow passageways into a kind of maze and created different chambers to confuse grave robbers. Now, interestingly, they pass by a goat. Second goat in the show.
Goat. Yes.
When they arrive at the dig site, they find blood and this tool. This is the hook that Egyptians would use for mummification, to remove the brain and organs through the nose. Stephen described it in the first episode.
We go up the old nozzle and all the organs would come out.
Now, this tool was obviously left behind by the zombie mummy priests that we see later in this episode. Basically, these priests were killed and mummified to protect the pharaoh in his death. In ancient Egypt, the pharaoh's servants were killed after he died for that purpose, to protect him in the afterlife.
Man, that sucks. Imagine working for a dude your whole life, he finally dies, and you think, ah, this is great. I can retire now. I can go fishing in that Nile River. Then they just kill you dead. Humans, man. I don't get it.
Yeah, me neither, pal. Maybe we could use a little bit of homage judgment. But moving on, when he tells Mark that maybe he can fight, he says,
It's in there somewhere. Muscle memory in that.
which would also explain how he was able to drive the cupcake van without a driver's license. Now, here's a weird thing in the episode that I think is going to definitely pay off in episode 5 or 6.
Oh, shit.
Did you see it? He punches himself in the jaw, not unlike the narrator does in Fight Club.
I am Jack's smirking revenge.
So, we've seen mounting evidence that there's a third personality in Mark's head, and we've also made a couple videos about it. This third personality is probably the one who made a date with this woman and who is inside this other sarcophagus at the end of the episode. This other personality seems to be able to move in and out of the body without the other two even knowing that he's there. And here, he punches Stephen just long enough to delay him belaying downwards. So, if this third personality knocked out Stephen for a moment and took control of the body, what did he do with that control?
Maybe something bad? Maybe something good?
Even the sound effect is more like what we heard in episode 1. So maybe it could have been this third personality, who's Jake Lockley in the comics, who killed all of these people. I'm going to throw out another theory. Jake has become really good at pretending to be Stephen. After all, he fools everyone at their work and he asks this lady out. So what if this guy, through most of the episode, is not Stephen? What if this is Jake pretending to be Stephen? At least when he's around Layla, because there's no reason for him to pretend to be Stephen when he's all alone. Now, another thing I love about this show is how much detail goes into every aspect of the show, like in Layla's wardrobe. Her earrings look like a sickle or an Egyptian khopesh with a snake winding through them. The snake is associated with either Aphasis, the serpent god of chaos, or the more benevolent Wadjet, the protector of kings and women in childbirth. But personally, I like the comparison to the cobra-headed goddess Merit Seeger, who punished the workers who committed sacrilege. Sacrilege like royal grave robbing, like she is kind of about to do. But Layla would have chosen these earrings because it's actually her job to track down the people who were grave robbers and who sell things on the black market and then return these artifacts to their proper place.
They've already been stolen.
Vin Wright's words on Twitter pointed out that the credits have changed slightly with every episode, with the moon phases slowly becoming full. So as the series progresses and the heroes fully embrace being Moon Knight, the moon will become full. When Layla arrives in the tomb, she writes the Arabic letters which translate to P and A, the initials of her archaeologist father. Once they enter the tomb, there are so many nods to Egyptian history and the afterlife. These statues of twin lionesses could represent the goddess Sekhmet, a warrior goddess, or they could just be sphinxes. Stephen says,
So if they just sprang to life right now and asked me a riddle for passage, I'd be thrilled.
he's referring to the riddle of the Sphinx, which,
Like in Mario Odyssey?
kind of, except that that's a desert level of a video game inspired by the actual riddle of the Sphinx. Now, the Sphinx was a creature that lived outside the city of Thebes who would require travelers to answer a riddle before they could pass.
What was the riddle?
There's no need to get into like what it was specifically, but the answer was your mom.
Nice.
Right? Right here behind Layla is an Ankh, the symbol of the afterlife, or the breath of life. Now, this symbol was common in tombs to symbolize life after death. The whole reason these tombs were built was so the pharaoh could be nice and comfy when they were in the afterlife. Then they work out that the entire tomb is in the shape of the Eye of Horus, which is very cool for a few different reasons. Horus was the god of the sky, and we've pointed this out in past videos, that his right eye is the sun and his left eye is the moon, making Khonshu an aspect of Horus.
Like the kid in Monster Squad?
My name is Horus.
No, not at all like the kid in Monster Squad. The story goes that Horus's rival Set tore out his eye. Then he had it healed by another god, then offered it to his father Osiris, the god of the afterlife. The symbol was commonly used in funeral practices. Now, along the way, they find evidence that the mummy priest attacked Harrow's men, which it wouldn't surprise me if Harrow actually offered his people up as a sacrifice to be allowed to move further into the tomb. When the hands first emerge, this is straight from the Moon Knight comics, when he is escaping a mental institution that's inside of his mind, and which I'm going to talk about later on, believe me. Now, these jars were used to contain the organs of the body that were extracted during mummification. Each jar had a specific purpose. They represent the 4 sons of Horus, and also the 4 directions on a compass, and each jar was protected by a different goddess. That's why they have different animal heads on them.
Like a bubble bath.
Rubbly bubbly flibbity flobbity clean before you're done.
No, not like a bubble bath.
Hey, why was there snake skin on that arm?
Good question. Stephen says,
Snake skins and self-regeneration thing. Lots of
self-regeneration. Just as the snakes shed their skins, the idea was to allow the mummies to be able to regenerate themselves in the afterlife. And the protector mummies communicate with these clicks, almost like reptiles. Now, this whole sequence reminds us a lot of past adventure movies, particularly Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Going deep into a temple to find an artifact, crossing a deep chasm, gives me a heart attack right here. Ooh. Stephen is like a kid at Christmas, wondering which lost tomb he is about to discover.
Tutmos 2. Nefertiti. Oh, it's got to be one of the big uns.
Now, in case you didn't know, there are some extremely important famous pharaohs who were once the most powerful people in the world who are buried in places that no one knows. Not because they're secret, but just because people forgot where they were. It's a reminder that I shouldn't walk around thinking I'm hot stuff just because my No Way Home video cracked 1 million views. He mentions Tutmos, the 4th pharaoh during the 18th dynasty, and Nefertiti, not to be confused with Nefertiri, this wife of Ramses who got away with showing some nip in the 10 Commandments. Nefertiti was one of the most powerful women who ever lived, and nobody knows where her tomb is. Turns out this is the tomb of Alexander the Great, who in his time conquered the known world. Fans of our Watchmen coverage will remember that Adrian Veidt idolized Alexander the Great. His master plan to end the Cold War was similar to Alexander solving the Gordian knot puzzle by cutting it in half. In fact, I'm wondering if the axe that he used is the same one that's here in the tomb. This toy army is with Alexander because he was a general and a soldier, so he would have his army to protect him in the afterlife. Now, Alexander was Macedonian, but he invaded Gaza, restored temples that were neglected by the Persians, and dedicated new monuments to the Egyptian gods, and he founded the city of Alexandria in Egypt. Many Egyptians later came to see him as a liberator and made temple sacrifices to the gods that legitimized him as a pharaoh. Alexander liked to say that he was the son of the god Zeus Amun-Ra, which is like a hybrid of Egyptian and Greek deities. And it turns out that in the MCU, he was the avatar of Ammit, and he betrayed her at one point, according to Harrow.
But she was betrayed
Was she?
by indolent fellow gods.
Oh,
By even her own avatar.
avatars.
Stephen then has to desecrate the grave of Alexander the Great.
Not a great plan.
This is somewhat recreating the process of mummification they told the little girl about in episode 1.
Hook, right? And you go up the old nozzle and all the organs would come out.
When Harrow sees Layla, he says,
And your husband, he is in agony. More pain than anyone could bear.
And the key line there is any one, implying the reason why Mark's mind created his alters. He couldn't cope with the trauma that he was experiencing, so he created more identities to share that pain with. It's actually kind of sweet. After Stephen retrieves the statue, Layla confronts Mark about her dad, and he basically confirms his comic book origin.
My partner got greedy and he executed everyone at the dig site.
But the question is, was that partner another character like Raoul Bushman from the comics, or, like we theorized in this video, did one of Mark's alters actually kill Layla's father? And we also get some insight about how Stephen was created. Mark says he tried to apologize to Layla since they met.
I tried to tell you since the moment we met.
That's the reason that we met.
So every moment that Mark has spent with Layla has been spent feeling guilty. No wonder he created a new personality who was perfect for her and had no memory of her dad's death. And when Harrow's people came into the vault, Mark's reaction was this.
There's one dwarf yet in Moria who still draws prep.
And then Harrow shoots Mark, maybe killing him. So let's talk about that ending, shall we?
Yes, please.
So, the way Mark falls into cross position and into water is very New Testament, alluding to the crucifixion and baptism. And this is appropriate because, just as Christ was resurrected, Mark is being reborn as well. Maybe he's being reborn into reality, where he's a mental patient. Or maybe the asylum is all happening in his mind, and he'll have to go through a mental trial to be reborn.
Yeah, talk about the ending. Talk about that.
Okay, great. So, the ending is based heavily on the terrific Moon Knight run by Jeff Lemire and Greg Smallwood. Mark wakes up in a mental institution where the lead doctor is Amit. He has to go on this long journey weaving in and out of his different identities before it's revealed that actually, you know what? No, I ain't gonna retell it, just read the comics. They're great.
Books are the real treasures of the world.
Tomorrow we have a video coming out with all the clues that the whole show has been in Mark's head. And later this week we have another video that shows why the asylum was all in his head. But I want to offer up an idea that kind of falls somewhere in between. I think that Mark did die, and the sequence where he floats upward is his soul ascending to the afterlife. I think that the asylum is kind of a mental purgatory that is a way for his soul to be judged. So when Harrow tries to judge Stephen in episode 1, the scales don't work. And he says,
"There's chaos in you."
But in the asylum, Stephen and Mark are separate people whose souls can now be judged separately. There are so many Easter eggs in this final part that connect to the rest of the show. We're going to go over most of these in our explainer videos, but I just want to touch on a few. The movie featuring Stephen Grant is a kind of a spin on 90s adventure shows like Hercules or Xena Warrior Princess. The Golden Compass is a replacement for the Golden Scarab, and obviously the Moon God is also very prominent too.
The statue of Coyolxauhqui, lunar god of the Aztecs.
The statue of the Moon God has 3 faces, like this shot from the end credits showing 3 identities for Mark. And if this whole show is a hallucination inspired by a knockoff of Indiana Jones, it would explain why the show Moon Knight has repeated so many of the story beats of those movies. The bingo caller is Crawley, the living statue from the first 2 episodes, and who is Moon Knight's informant in the comics. Every character in the asylum has appeared at some other point in the series, and the nurses were the police who arrested him. This confrontation with 2 specific orderlies was taken straight from the comics, and they even have the same names, Bobby and Billy. But look at all these other similarities to the show. The bowls of differently colored jello are like the jars of powder used for mummification. We have a Rubik's Cube, Donna with the scarab toy that we saw in the gift shop, postcards, people sitting around watching movies. One of the clock hands ends in a crescent moon. The cupcake trolley is the cupcake truck. The passport woman has drawn a Khonshu bird just as she made Layla a passport with her image on it. We also see Gus the fish, Layla eating Turkish delight, and Mark's tied to his wheelchair like he was tied to his bed, a Moon Knight action figure wearing all white like Moon Knight. Oh, and you know that Moon Knight action figure? Mark painted that himself. How do we know? Because, and this is a very obscure Easter egg, that is actually a Skeletor action figure.
I could write a book about what you don't know.
And there are even more of these things in Harrow's office. Harrow has organ jars like we saw in the tomb. And Harrow, of course, walks with a cane, and his office is surrounded with Egyptian artifacts, including that protector god Sobek who we saw earlier in the tomb. He quotes the movie Tomb Buster.
"No tree can ascend to the light of heaven if it doesn't descend to the depths of hell."
Which sounds like proof that this is all a supernatural trial. Like Mark has to live through this hell before he can rise above his illness. Harrow also gives a talk about objects representing what we think they mean.
To me, this is a writing utensil. To my dog, it's a chew toy. Both are accurate.
Now, in the same way that, like I mentioned earlier, these Egyptian gods don't rule over the literal heavens and stars. They merely rule how humans perceive those heavens. So it's more like they're the god of our perceptions. Now, it's interesting that his office is decorated much like the tomb of Alexander, because this is where his journey to enlightenment begins, just like in the tomb. The tomb was a place where he had to die to let go of his old reality. And so is this office. It's where he starts to break free from the mental asylum illusion. Each of these are places where one thing ends and a new thing is about to begin. He also sees a painting of the German town in episode 1, Harrow's Sandals, and you know what?
What?
All of this whole sequence has been foreshadowed by the end credits, which have been showing a mental asylum hallway since episode 1. Moving on, like I said, we're covering all that more in our breakdown videos. When Mark escapes, he finds Steven in a sarcophagus, and their reunion had real Finn Poe energy.
Oh, Dameron, you're alive? Buddy.
Oscar Isaac is really good at being happy to see people. Now, on the way out, they see another sarcophagus, which probably contains the third personality that's been hinted at in the show. Someone had to have asked this woman out, someone stabbed these people, and someone told the security guard that his name was... Sky. Now, we've made a few videos about this third personality, but we think it's probably Jake Lockley, the meanest of Mark's 3 main alters in the comics. In episode 3, both Mark and Steven just kind of ignored the idea that there was a third personality.
Oh, God. Steven, what did you do? I swear it wasn't me. Then who was it?
And we see the same thing here, where they both know to instinctively pretend that this other sarcophagus does not exist. And you can tell this personality is violent because of the red sarcophagus.
Red like the blood moon.
Very good.
So, what's up with that hippo lady at the end? Is she single?
Now, I don't know about that, but that is the goddess Tararet. She's kind of like a nurse or a helper goddess, with nicknames like the Mistress of Pure Water or the Lady of the Birth House, just as Steven and Mark are going to be birthed into a new world when they escape this mental prison. But that's just all the Easter eggs we found. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below and any questions you might have, or you can @ me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, be sure to subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Arey.